happening, everyone? We are here today with a Red Bull sponsorship. It's not what I was going to say. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Red Bull. I keep thinking of all these puns with Red Bull. I want to get this background out when it's special times, special days. I looked at my archive and I saw Axis Alive -06. It's I download videos, clip them out, stuff like that. That means this show, Axis has been on here at least 7 times, at least. I think he's come on a couple other times when it wasn't just me and him. So that's pretty cool. He's in the RHMax top 5 probably. I know him and Dipcatcher, Sloth. Yeah, there's a handful of GIF maybe. Handful of people that's been on the show almost 10 times. So this guy tends to know what he's talking about at least half the time. That's why we keep having him back. He gets the people going and hopefully get some good information, good topics, and he can tell us what he knows about tops, bottoms, left, right, up, down. Shout out to our friend Somi. All the fun stuff going on. It is the end in sight. We never know. But the charts, they tell a story. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Real quick, talk to this chat. We'll bring him in to get started. Thank you for splitting your time between us and Coffee and DCC, by the way. Scheduling is hard, and it happens every once in a while. So I'm glad at least we can give everyone a show to bounce back and forth between, depending on what you want to listen to. Lots of good perspectives going around tonight. So appreciate having all these awesome streamers. Can happen. Let's go. Let's effing go. Right there. Spiffy-tastic. What's happening? Bobby Hexarod's here. Davis, no bottom in sight. I guess that's a bottom signal. That could be words of wisdom. Never know. We don't know, and can't predict the future. But Davis, welcome. Hexagon Army's here. What's up? Pudding Guru. Axis Live is in the green room. Let's bring him in. Without further ado, get this guy back in the show. Axis Live, he's here.
What's going on, everybody in the chat?
We're back. The chat is...
We're back again. I think you're right. I think this is like number 7 or 8. I don't even know anymore. I don't know how to count that high.
Officially 7. I'll help you out. I think it's officially 7, but you came on at least 2 or 3 times when it was either unplanned or unknown if you were going to join or not. So I think you might be close to 10, man. You might have hit this. Maybe number 10. Never know.
Awesome,
Pretty
man.
cool.
Well, thanks for having me back on the stream. I'm always happy to lend my information sources and knowledge to the viewers. That's what I do. I try to give my honest and unfiltered opinion on everything cryptocurrency. So I'm happy to be back.
We are happy you are part of our community, and we can hold you close and dear and take care of you and feed you and give you good information.
Nurture me, coddle me. Make me
Calm
feel
you.
good about actually saying stuff about, that's right half the time, as you said.
That's yes, at least half the time. That's the metric.
Hey man, go check out my pinned tweet. That one felt real good. That one played out pretty good.
Oh, okay. We might have to bring that up. Actually, might have to bring it up.
This was like a tweet. It was like a TA post from back on January 8th, predicting like a run up on Ethereum HEX all the way up to 10 to 12 cents, and then a rejection back down to 0.2 cents based on this Bitcoin fractal. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see it all kind of play out. I mean, when you make a projection like that, it's hard to even fathom what would create that. But then I went a step further and annotated what kind of fundamental driving factor would actually make the chart do that, and so it all kind of played out. It was within a 1.5 month margin of error, but the price range is hit. Crazy.
Wow. Were you the guy who said 15K in Prey as well, or 11K in Prey? One of those? Were you that, or that different?
I don't know if I was ever really that firm on the 15K or the 10K target or 11K. I mean, I guess I thought Richard's been right a lot, so that made sense. But then even he was caught, explaining in an interview sometime around 25, 30K that because of all the excess money printing that perhaps we wouldn't see 10K, perhaps we'd bottom around 15.5K. And that's what we saw on this leg down of the bear market. And so, I think I was more neutral on what could happen there. But, as we were falling down, there were people making bottom calls at first 17K and then on the double bottom on 15K, the people on YouTube that I follow. So I kind of fell more into that camp just because that particular guy's been so right. And a lot of his analysis is just solid. So,
dude, there's so much stuff, macros have been going on too. I mean, what's his name? Michael Burry was talking about all that stuff too. Yeah. Let's get your thoughts on that.
In terms of the macro structure charts, what's going on there. So I've been watching the dollar because it about 4 weeks ago started to like print some green candles after this huge 3% sell down. And, it was such a harsh rejection. It was like, let's say 2.91%. And then it rallied now for 5 weeks in a row. And now it's like testing resistance. And if it continues to do this, I think the narrative right now is like that the BRICS nations are coming together to try to make a competing currency with the US dollar. And so, in the same way that when the euro was announced and started back in, I think that was the 80s or 90s or whatever, the dollar then also saw a surge as a way for the US to assert its dominance in the currency space. And then what happened after that was some volatility. But so perhaps this is a similar setup where the dollar is going to rise and risk assets are going to come off, and that's why your Michael Burrys are putting up $50 million bets, leveraged shorts, thinking that the stock market could do a short-term double top and come down over the next 2 to 4 months into some sort of a capitulation low, which would be like the perfect short, right? The quick, nasty thrust down in the face of a strong dollar, and steady or rising interest rates, and in the housing market, the prices are going to be remaining elevated because people that are in like fixed, small, low interest rate mortgages are going to hold their properties at those cheap fixed rates, and they're not going to be unwilling to sell to just go back into a higher rate purchase of their next property. So what this has created is a sort of a gridlock or a stagflation in the economy, especially in the housing market. And then in addition to that, you're seeing like prices of food and gas are now elevated. Food in particular is up 30 to 40%, and luxury goods are kind of starting to base out and go higher again. And so like you're starting to see this inflation priced in at these elevated costs of money, right? And so to borrow money now costs more than ever. Consumer credit's at an all-time high. Like it's a situation where people have no savings, have tons of debt. It's going to cost more money to borrow, and they're unwilling to sell their good positions on their assets that they still hold. And so it's really kind of an interesting environment. And at the same time, oil prices come up as well. As the same time, gold price has been declining week by week. And so it's just a unique inflection point in the cycle, and this could be setting up for like short-term pain on the risk side. So that means crypto, and we saw the big spill on ETH and Bitcoin earlier today, and I think that could continue. But we'll have to see how this all kind of like pans out. But this is a key moment to watch across all of these different variables.
Yeah, that's the crazy. And yeah, speaking of dumping, I'm sure we'll get into it in a minute. Elon dumped corn again. Yeah, it's just speaking of people too that don't. People are going through their savings, credit card debt. I don't know if all-time highs, but it's way up there right now. If you're trying to invest, you talk about people holding on to their assets and positions and stuff. Do people even have money to put into it? Like, is that like trying to get people to buy is like they wish they could buy, but they just don't have a lot to put into, especially risk assets. Is that kind of how you see things going?
Yeah, I think like people haven't stopped vacationing, but they've stopped buying like their second and third car, or the extra vacation house, or or they'll choose to get a cheaper food. So like people are cutting costs all over the place, and like because there is, for example, in crypto, there's good deals. There's like 1,200-day plus best prices you could get on some of this stuff right now, and so people are trying to sell, their wife, children, and dogs just to pay for a chance at the risk market. At the same time, the risk market is now declining, which is going to put people that do take that risk now under a massive pressure that would even create more forced sellers. And so yeah, we're just in a tough spot right now. Big money's not really come back in now at this point. There's no reason to. It's big money is now looking to short, I guess, is what it's looking like.
Wow. It's that, and it's kind of pointing at the title of the stream too, talking about the bottom. It seems like every 2 or 3 months we're like, okay, this should be the bottom. I can't get much more max pain. Like, yeah, I've been talking max pain indicator. I started like 50, 70. I think the last time I even mentioned it, maybe it was a couple months ago. Okay, this feels like 97%, 98%. Is this one of those things? And if you want to bring up the TA to talk about this or just speak on it, like another leg down, like is that something that's first of all, is there more people left to sell, or is everyone just kind of like, hey, I'm already out? And I don't know. I just can't
This
see
is a really good
prices
point.
happening again.
Yeah, it's so I think
Not financial advice.
this is one of those moments where like we're basically going to enter free fall again. Like we're in free fall right now. So here's let's just look at Pulse. That's what a lot of people care about. So like what happened here was this was creating really good structure on the price chart, but the SEC lawsuit against Richard Hart enticed a couple whales to get cold feet and sell, 30 billion plus PLS in one button press. And so what that did was it created this break of structure, and this turned into like a bear flag, where it could have been, a rounded bottom and turned into support. Mr. Lettuce Hands, pushed us lower in the face of all that fear. And so what ended up happening was we saw this huge decline in prices as we went down 67%. And then some linked wallets to this purchase here was like HEX, so the exchange that listed Pulse, and they have literally billions of dollars of stable coins sitting on their balance sheets. It's all verifiable in their reserves. They came in here, and these two candles here was $26 million of volume here, and the second candle was 25 million. So they pumped, not alone, of course, but OKEX, the majority, and then the market as a whole pumped $50 million back into PLS at these levels. And so it created a short-term automatic rally back into this level here. And you can kind of see the trend here. So now in terms of like what's happened is the price has now receded back down to kind of test the base here. And the price got back above this line, and it's now become a grind line where it's trying to find support here somewhere. And then hopefully it'll start to round out and we can start to build structure off this base. And now I think like the main fear for another leg lower is some sort of FUD event. Of course, my TA can't predict what human emotions are going to do or stop someone from selling in a moment of panic. But the fact that that these prices are holding right now, and then that these are higher lows as of this moment, in the face of that pressure from Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's a good sign. First off, so that I'm optimistic there. Here's Bitcoin. It saw a wick back off this sell-off today. So the story goes, Elon sold, I don't remember what the dollar amount was. I think it was like 300 million or 230 million or something dollars of Bitcoin, and it caused this like wave down. And now the price has gotten wicked back up 6%. So it fell 14%, but it recovered 6% so far. And then on the Ethereum price chart, I read somewhere that somebody approved and potentially approved an ETF for ETH. So this chart actually looks better. It also fell 18%, but now it's wicked back up 12%. So it's actually performing better out of this dip than Bitcoin. And if this level holds over the weekend and into next week, we could see ETH recover here. And that would confirm for me that at least that we'll go back and try to test 2K. Because that was such a big move with, I think, about over $200 million of traded volume on just a Coinbase ETH USDC pair or USD pair. And then in addition to this, and we also saw like total liquidations on Bitcoin today, I think was like over 800 million. And it might have been the whole total market cap, or it might have been just Bitcoin. I'm not sure. But I read on Twitter that there was $800 million of liquidations, which kind of clears out the books, clears out all the open interest, and then resets all the leverage in the system. And now perhaps with a bunch of these buyers coming back in here on Ethereum and here on Bitcoin that the spot buying came back in, and now they can create a new price floor. All the free money for the market makers has been absorbed, the 800 million across all the exchanges, and we could just continue on from here. And if you zoom out on this Bitcoin chart and you look at the different fractal patterns from these levels, I mean, the general route forward from here is something like this, right? Some sort of a curved thing going into next year, right? And it's long, boring, and painful for people that want instant money or instant returns. This is the low volatility chop that, crypto people really can't stand. But this is where structure comes in and builds for the bull run so that we can create a nice parabola going into this cycle. And so in terms of Pulse dumped first here on, when was this, May 24th. And then ETH dumped second on June 6th. And then again, it's like Pulse led the way again. SEC FUD Pulse dumps first, and now ETH just dumped today. So it seems to me like that the Pulse HEX ecosystem has more to say about crypto's future than people give it credit for, and the fact that it's leading the price action, even though it's, we're only really talking about, a $500 million of funds. When you look at those, like the Dune analytics for, the PulseChain bridge coming in and out, you can really see a clear view of what the last 100 days of PulseChain has really looked like in terms of liquidity. According to this chart here, there's been a total cumulative $609 million of deposits on the bridge, and then in terms of what's left of the PulseChain, it's looking like there's roughly $460 million of withdrawals. So that leaves you a net of like $150 million still of value still on the PulseChain bridge. And I would say somewhere between like 95 and 120 million is like the sweet spot of like where we're sitting in terms of stable value that seems to want to like stay on PulseChain for the opportunity.
Well, yeah. Could you share that link too to the to Dune side? I don't think I've seen that one.
Sure thing. I'm going to put it in the chat so you guys can all take a look if you're interested. This is Dune.com. This guy Derek69 made this. So yeah, definitely useful for managing and kind of like predicting risk, and you can kind of see early on. You can even do a breakdown here to like break it down by this different stable coins or HEX or ETH or wrapped BTC and kind of see whatever asset you're interested or curious in, whether it's coming in or going out.
Yeah, can you drop the link in the private chat real quick? I don't think I need to mod you. My bad. So you could just delete it otherwise. So that's because I've been looking at a link on the bridge that's been more of like the token values and stuff, but it doesn't have the token totals and all that stuff, all those metrics, but it doesn't have the actual charts and numbers and the ins and outs part.
Yeah, it's super useful. Cool tool for sure.
Is it so? I know didn't the bridge have like 140 million on it as far as bridged in stuff? Was it maybe just a few weeks ago? I thought I looked at it the other day and it was.
So
is that what it is,
last week or so? Yeah. So currently, based on just these assets of DAI, USDC, USDT, ETH, E-Hex, wrapped BTC, you're seeing about 92 million. At least that's what GoPulse is picking up. And so there may be other coins that's not on this list that's actually brought value into. And I'm not sure, which ones. I'm not really that interested. I just like to look at I'll cross-reference like this data with like what Dune's saying, and just kind of say and just try to figure out. It's somewhere between 90 and 150 million of value. Let's just be conservative, and just for the ease of it, we'll just say $100 million is where we would like to keep the levels at. And I'm a little bit concerned with what's going on in terms of that PDAI thing. I know I'm not up to date or well read on every single angle of the speculation of what's going on under the hood in terms of the tokenomics and what's been changed in the underlying maker contract on the forked version on PulseChain, but if what some of the research is coming out is true, we're seeing some large holder of PDAI sell, and they're starting to extract Ethereum off of PulseChain in that way. And so, without going too deep onto that and creating like, FUD or FOMO, because that particular storyline is very emotional right now, and people are making a lot of money on it. And when people make a lot of money, they can also lose a lot of money on it. And so I just like to pretty much hold off. I'm actually doing a stream Tuesday night with somebody else, and I'll make that public over the weekend here probably. And then you guys want to know more about that, just come in there and watch that. We'll kind of try to cover all the bases and try to figure out the nuts and bolts of what's going on under the hood there with all those different things that's tied to PDAI.
And just to clarify too, PDAI. So when you're talking about PDAI, is it the copied over stable? It's not the bridged in DAI from Ethereum. It's actually the copy, the PDAI on PulseChain.
So PDAI would be the forked DAI. Yeah, the one that's native to PulseChain.
Somehow got liquidity.
It's just a forked. Yeah, it's just a forked DAI. Yeah. And there's other elements to that too, that in terms of there was a infinite mint function was rumored, and there's, coins that's tied to it that was created before the bridge was even live. So it's clearly that somebody had intent and some sort of a strategy behind that before the bridge even went live. So it's very interesting to say the least. And I did post some video content and Brizology on his YouTube channel. Also, I point to him because he was uploading some Twitter spaces of what's being said. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing going on. It's probably the most interesting thing going on because there's so much mystery behind what's going on with that that little niche of the PulseChain ecosystem right now, in the face of all this downward pressure on the native token and Pulse.
Shout out to the chat and our friend Somi here. He says, great streaming friends. Always made to hear from you both. Triple FUD news and bullish Ethereum ETF news. Wonder if HEX PulseChain can recover earlier than the others next leg.
It's possible, man. If it's easier to move the Pulse market, and if it's got the backing of billionaires, HEX and perhaps Richard and friends, Greg the Duck and his buddies, maybe perhaps we will actually continue to lead, but just back to the upside. It would be cool to see. It's still left to be known whether or not the added pressure from the BankX bags on the E-Hex side is enough to hold PulseChain down. I would tend to say no, but if they continue to sell at a clip of about 7% per month, we could be looking at a 14 to 16 month recovery period for E-Hex, unless serious size starts to come in and absorb those bags. And one of the things is at these prices they really don't have that much ammunition, just a few $1 million. But if you're going to move the Pulse market, you're going to move those coins a lot more because there's a lot more volume and a lot more liquidity coming into the market, and so perhaps that would be enough to absorb all of the BankX dumping and plus the rest of the market on E-Hex side, all the way up to 3 cents, right? From these that'd be a 10x range where they could continue to absorb that. Now I was looking at the TVL on E-Hex today. This plays a significant role in my eyes on the recovery time for Pulse, because the same people that sacrifice for PulseChain and have big bags in HEX are also holders of E-Hex. And so whether you want to hold it for all-time highs or 20 cents or sell it, at a penny, or buy a bag down here and sell it at 5 cents, everyone's got a different strategy. It's the same underlying user base, but the TVL on Ethereum is down to the same levels it was at 1.44 million as it was back in May 5th of 2021. So we're basically, in terms of total value locked, there's not much left in the pools. So BankX their best bet is to bridge it over to, and I hope they're listening, bridge it over to Pulse and dump it over there, because it would be more easily absorbed and any pumping that came in from like a billionaire would we're talking 50 million or 100 million dollars would be able to push out that sell pressure quite easily out of the way. Whereas like on the ETH side, it's so illiquid. I mean, you're literally looking at like there's almost nothing in these pools currently. Let's see. I think it's trading. It's like you can't even see the red bar in here. It's like it's somewhere in here. I mean, you're talking there's no money here. Like there's like $100 or $200 of liquidity here. So like there's no liquidity where we're sitting currently. So that's why the ETH in terms of like the ETH side for trading, it's dead. Like there's no all of the USDC liquidity is down here at like 0.001. And so that's why I kind of, if you go to your friend Sami's posts, I posted under it today, how, the current liquidity setup on the ETH side is basically saying that E-Hex can go as far as 0.001. And then it would be a 10x to a penny. And like, how amazing would that be? For people that think that it's going to come back, right? Like there would be a chance to buy like a lifetime chance. Like wouldn't have never seen these levels if there was no PulseChain or no fork or dilution. So much of this ecosystem has been diluted into all these other coins. So it's an opportunity. You have the same user base, but the money's been spread across hundreds of coins. It's like that's really where it hasn't. Some of it's left the ecosystem, and that's what that bridge data is showing us. But most of it's just been redistributed and diluted out across all these other assets, setting up for a nice foundation.
The low liquidity on E-Hex too, is there, I guess, is there a case to be made for, easier to pump low liquidity? But again, who's buying it? Like why would you, if you're buying E-Hex, I guess, what are your reasons for buying E-Hex at this point with the liquidity and trading situation?
So like the liquidity situation isn't going to stop you from buying E-Hex if you believe in some of the reasons why you'd want to buy it. And the main reason is like it's a mutable contract that pays yield. The price is down 99%. So even if it just moves up to a penny, it's practically a 3 or 4x your money, which is meaningful if you can get some. And so to the argument of low liquidity in terms of like slippage and stuff, you could just buy it over on the PulseChain where there's 900,000 of liquidity on that pair on the V2, and there's another 200,000 on the V1. So there's a million, couple like $1 to $2 million across the two. So there's places that you can spread your orders to get Hex at these prices without incurring so much slippage. It's a little more work right now, but I think like forward looking, if Hex recovers, right, and I think we could agree that if Pulse succeeds, Hex succeeds, and if there's a lot of ifs here, but if gas fees are reduced on the east side, that narrative kind of breaks down in terms of why E-Hex might have less value relative to P-Hex. And I just think it's the market is just so mispricing all these assets right now, and there's just so much to buy. Like Hedron on 2 chains, Icosa on 2 chains, Hex on 2 chains, PulseChain, PulseX. Do you want to throw a moonbag into ink? Do you want to buy P-Dye shitcoin of the week? Do you want to ape into Axis token? There's just so many options out there in terms of like what you can buy. So like to me, the opportunity on the E-Hex is that you can get some supply. Especially on the east side, if you had limit orders set down where that liquidity is, you could get 5-figure bags without too much slippage, and then just you're basically holding that for a 10x to a penny, from 1/10 of a cent to a penny. Like that's free, that's basically free money at this point. In the event that this stuff survives, I don't see a world where Hex on one chain survives and Hex on the other chain doesn't survive. That to me won't happen, and I have the data to back that up. If you go back and you look at other coins that have forked before and what they did in terms of percentage from the lows of that cycle, or if you look at different like SEC lawsuits before and what they did to price charts and how they performed after. I know Sami's made mention of XRP on his feed. You can go look at that and see how that did a 10x in 163 days after the SEC FUD news bottomed and Coinbase delisted it. And then, look at 4 years later, Ripple gets a little bit of a win. And then, like I did, I went, I think it was 10x long on XRP and just made a frickin' 240% return. And that's all documented on Twitter, because it was like an automatic trade. And that's kind of what you could see out of E-Hex if, gas fees gets reduced. And I don't think it's a matter of if, but more of a matter of when. And any benefit that you get on that gives a pump-a-mental to E-Hex down the road. And then any of that positive gas reduction gets then transported to PulseChain as well, making the runway for PulseChain multiples in the bull cycle even higher, because it will be less slowed down by any in multiple returns because of gas fees on that chain as well. Because let's not forget that it's still the Ethereum chain. It's just been created it's been duplicated. So I think it's just setting up for, I don't really think anyone really can comprehend how much money can flow into this space, and how much of a need there is for yield bearing assets, and how little money it really takes in the grand scheme of a multi-trillion-dollar asset class. How little of that amount of money needs to come in to create value in the market. Once all the dead weight's out of the system, market makers can come in and create a market at 10x or 20x the values that we're at now, and then that just sets the floor, and then the market will take you to multi-dollar price targets on either of the hexes.
Yeah. What about the gatekeeping we've seen too with Uniswap? Is that something the market is? Did we see any change? Was that anywhere baked into the price of E-Hex? We got the Godwell stuff. We got the cheaper, faster fees on PulseChain. But what about the Uniswap stuff? Did that have any effect? Do you think, if anyone baking risk into E-Hex for that?
I mean, I would say that there's probably people that want to onboard in that, for example, might see the movie and then they just click on the Uniswap, what they're used to for DeFi, and then they don't see it as an option to trade that. And sure, that does slow down adoption for sure. But I think like a lot of the people that are paying attention to Hex from this point right now are all power users, and they can find their way around it. So I don't really think it really matters in the grand scheme of things. As we set the bottom and create that markup on price, that accumulation of the lows, absorption of supply from weak hands to strong, and then the markup, and then the floor, and then creating a market for the bull run.
How much do you think no one knows how long the SEC stuff's going to last, but if it lasts into whenever the next bull market comes, 2024, 2025, whenever it comes, how much do you think it matters? How much do you think it's going to affect the ecosystem?
Well, we can only really know for sure based on what's happened to other coins that's been affected by the SEC. So XRP, for example, I mean, it really struggled for a long time. And it was for 2,000 days, it was trapped in a range. And, you got that pressure from the lawsuit, but then you got just the pressure of the dilution of the value of this market. And so I guess to answer the question about the SEC thing, it can slow down growth for sure. But remember, it's just a move against RH. It's not really a move against the blockchain itself. Like PulseChain will continue to function, and so will Hex on both sides. And I don't think there's ever a reality where like all of the dexes together come together and they block the trading of Hex, for example. So like to me, the code will live on and continue to live on, and the community will live on, and all it takes is one believer that's got 7, 8, 9 figures that really wants to get them and their group of buddies together to create more value in this market based on that strong core foundation of the code itself. So to me, it's like a non-topic in terms of will it survive. To me, it's more of like a how long is it going to take. And like in terms of XRP here, we pull up like a weekly chart. I mean, it's been trapped underneath its 2018 all-time high here for 2,051 days, right? So but inside of there, the opportunity, if this were to be the way this plays out, was a 10x here over 392 days. And then the downside was 80% over 600 days, which we've seen that now in HEX. And then most recently a 216% rally. So maybe the worst case would be that you trapped in a range for way longer than people were willing to wait. But you know, I think the more optimistic view is that fundamentally the SEC is not going to have anything on Richard, and so they might just drag their feet on the lawsuit for a while to create bad optics on the project. But long term, none of that's going to hold, and they would have to go a step further and get some sort of like DOJ enforcement and try to make it seem like he did something criminal in this all. And I don't think that they're going to have a basis to stand on there. So I guess it's just that everything's been delayed in terms of, and there's more variables and unknowns into how long this all takes to play out. But you know, some of the conversation is, are we going to have a muted cycle? Are we going to not have as good of gains as we could have had, or what we expected? Like, are we not going to see potentially like $3 to $5 HEX this cycle because of all of this? Are we only going to maybe see 25 cents or 50 cents per HEX this cycle? And that's a valid concern too. But I mean, if you bought above 10 cents and you're waiting and you never bought again. But I think the strategy here is that you're forced to buy again at these sub penny levels to like decrease your cost basis and give yourself a better chance of better returns on the way back to 1 penny, 5 cents, and then 10 cents. And you know, once all this is said and done and it's in the past, and HEX and PulseChain prove themselves this cycle, because it'll be HEX's second cycle, it's not something that you come back from in terms of like negativity. Like it ends up becoming like a blue chip store of value, and that's really where the aim is, right? And if we're right about this, HEX will be one of the biggest brands in cryptocurrency to ever exist and will last for decades.
That's what it was meant to do. Designed in so many ways to be a superior DeFi product ahead of its time, I think, too, and made Uniswap popular. You remember that? I wanted to ask too about you know, a lot of the biggest pairings with HEX and Ethereum, especially before a lot of liquidity moved, was like HEX USDC, HEX ETH. For example, HEX ETH in particular, you know, liquidity bonding went up and down together, that sort of thing. Now that HEX on Pulse is paired with PLS as one of the primary pairs, is it how is things different now that with the HEX pairings and across the PulseChain?
So HEX and PLS, I think, so we're talking about the Pulse HEX here. Yeah, most of the liquidity is in the Pulse pair. I'm going to let this load right now. But it looks like there's been $1.7 million of volume over the past 24 hours and about little over 16 million in the last 7 days. That's positive. And so then combined value there on HEX to Pulse, you're looking at 20 million. So there is way more value in terms of like depth of liquidity and less slippage on HEX on the PulseChain, just because of this relationship. So the way this routes through in the order books is, if you have, like, let's just use selling, for example. If I want to sell HEX on PulseChain, it's going to move HEX into the Pulse contract, and then it's going to go to the Pulse contract and sell Pulse for DAI, because DAI, USDC, and USDT are mostly tied to Pulse, and HEX is mostly tied to Pulse. So it'll go HEX to Pulse to stablecoin if that's the route. Same thing in reverse. If you're bringing stablecoins in, or ETH, it's going to go through Pulse, and then it's going to go through HEX. And then so what you end up having here is this function where HEX and Pulse move together due to something called Hart's Law. Many of you guys listening right now are familiar with that, but I can just show you that relationship quickly so you can kind of see, you know, what that looks like on the chart. But typically what we've been seeing is that PHEX has been performing better than Pulse. It's kind of crazy how that's been happening. 1 second while I load up this chart. So the overall structure here, I'll just, you know, do like a quick draw for you. So you had like a low, and then a blast off to a new high. Then you have wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. So you have like a ABC correction into the base, and then you have a run up, a spike down to new lows, and now you're trying to create a base. If you look at Pulse, same situation, just different places. So you're looking at the lows, spike up, new high, A, B, C correction, base out, make a new high, spike down to new lows, create a base. And so because HEX are, like, and here I'll go back to show you HEX, it's the same pattern except that HEX performed better on this leg up, and it's performed better in terms of it's made a higher, it didn't fall as far as Pulse did here in terms of percent. I mean, I could do the ruler and double check, but just based on the structure of it, it looks like Pulse took a bigger hit and didn't run as hard, whereas HEX ran harder and didn't take as big of a hit. It looks like HEX is where Pulsicans are finding value, to me. Like they were trying to store their value in it. But so the way this works is, like, again, money flows into PulseChain and then into HEX. Money flows out of HEX into PulseChain and then into stables. So it's because they're moving together because of that $20 million of liquidity that's binding them together. And so in the same way, Pulse is tied to everything else in the ecosystem. And that kind of makes it more valuable because it decreases slippage and makes the total TVL in the entire ecosystem more. So like this number here of liquidity showing you $112 million of liquidity on PulseX in the pools on V1, and then on V2 there's another almost 10 million. So you got like 131 million across these two versions of PulseX. So there's $131 million of value. And then again, according to GoPulse, there's $92 million of bridged in value. So $92 million is backing the remainder $30 million, $40 million of value sitting in these pools. So like that, the way that works out is you have 130, let's see here, 100, let's say $120 million of value backed by $92 million of like stable bridged in value. So the net difference is that like 30 million, right? And that 30 million is what the PulseX, HEX from PulseChain, and all the other non-stable units of account are worth based on their dollar price. So it's kind of a cool setup. It works well because, you pump one, you pump all. You have other tokenomics and factors bleeding in there. That's like the PulseX buy and burn, which is helping support and lift up the system at all times, buying and burning based on transaction volume. So it's all kind of like helping the ecosystem mitigate sell pressure and help prop the system up and keep it inflated.
Amazing to see some of these stats. The value's there. Is there, when you think about, do you have any targets for where you're looking as far as value or TVL locked in the Pulse chain or volume? Like are there any metrics or things that you look for that are signs for things going better or worse for that?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see is more value being deposited onto the Pulse chain bridge, or more bridges open up and more value get deposited there. And then that value gets deployed. So stable coins, wrapped ETH, wrapped BTC gets deployed and pushes the prices of these other assets up through the act of buying. I think that's like the goal. And so one thing I've been looking at, was like I would go to like these TVLs on Uniswap and look at kind of what it's been like. If you go back to, so if you look at the total TVL on the Ethereum side over here during the bull run last cycle, you can see that this TVL has just continued to climb. And I think like when you start to see more and more value get deposited on the bridge, you're going to see that capital is then deployed. Now, this is in a bullish environment, but you're going to see this value be deployed and push up the prices of, like native assets like PulseChain, PulseX, Inc., some of the others, Hedron, Icosa, some of the others. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is like that the value stays on there and you don't see these net outflows of just fiat extraction or stable value extraction. But again, like this is all happening because, crypto risk is off on the macro, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the macroeconomic space that's putting pressure on the liquidity the whole economy has because of increased prices to live in the real world. And so it's definitely not going to come into crypto yet, right? And so we're kind of waiting for that quantitative easing or that easing in monetary policy to really give us the momentum to really kind of see the value be deposited back into PulseChain. Because as it stands, Ethereum is still the number one EVM network, right? And so that's basically you're gonna see these TVLs like base out like they are here on Ethereum side. Perhaps this will be a leading indicator when these start to increase. Some of those profits may flow across the bridge into other opportunities on Pulse. Or, as we said earlier, maybe, as Sami alluded to, maybe we'll see, funds get deposited beforehand and PulseChain actually starts to bull market. And who's going to do that is going to be an exchange, like a billionaire class player or at least, 9-figure player that can like bring in enough money to jumpstart and ignite the ecosystem. And what that looked like before the PulseChain fork happened in the HEX world, when there was just one asset, was about $150 million would have been enough to absorb all of the weak hand money at the lows and kind of like ignite that bull market. But we're just in a different phase right now, and now things are changing with the dollar and the stock market and things. So we're gonna have to let this stuff play out over the next 3 to 4 months, and then hopefully next year we can start on a new foot.
Wow. I'll ask you one more before we get into maybe some of the bottom questions too. Why do you think there hasn't been any more farms on PulseX? What talk about value extraction, the copies, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's not beneficial because ink is so depreciated now that really the only people making decent income at these APRs are big bag players. And so I think the whole goal with creating farms in the first place was to drive adoption and usage and putting liquidity into the pools and to like stop extraction by putting more value in them. But because we're like not seeing that now at this point, it's just became an extraction game for the time being. There's just no real benefit in doing that or playing those games at this point. I think it's pretty simple. Yeah, I just don't see the point right now. I think you want to keep less pools to just keep the pools in here that's created for the market to function, right? So if, at least incentivize your big players to put in some stable coins and some wrapped ETH from Ethereum, perhaps, like some HEX and some PulseX, and then the ink, just to keep that core foundation still there, the engine's still burning, and that buy and burn still going to work, but not keep adding more and more layers of abstraction to like distract people away from what's important.
So this is what we have now is basically what we need. Like we need the circular positive trading between the pair of the blue chips and maybe wrapped ETH and some stable coins. It's like the basics.
Yes, because this is what's going to drive this system further. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a pump and dump like we tried that with wrapped BTC and then the forked ERC20 coins, and it all it was a pump and then an extraction of fiat. It did get people to look at the bridge, learn how to use it, come over, bridge some in, sell off all their forked coins, and then pull it all back off. And it was just like a blink of an eye. And that all ended up in just extraction. But it did create some awareness around PulseChain that wasn't there before. So that was more of just like the cost you paid for marketing, I guess. And whether or not that was effective, we'll see in the long term if those people have regrets for leaving those coins, if they do happen to do a laggard pump after these core assets have already kind of taken off.
Certainly hope that PulseChain shows people it is viable, the ecosystem. All the products haven't even launched yet, and we've got a lot more to go this year and into next too. Bottom, is this, I'll ask the question, is this the bottom for the PulseChain ecosystem and all the coins that we hold near and dear to our hearts? What do you think?
Well, so the conditions that needs to be met for this to be the bottom is you'd want to see Ethereum and Bitcoin kind of hold these levels and not go any lower. But currently that doesn't look like what's going to happen because it was such a huge breakdown. But not to say it can't. There was a huge, like I said, there was that huge wick on ETH, and that's promising. That's a good start. That this levels hold, right? And with that ETF thing, that was kind of bullish news too. So maybe this was just like a push down just to liquidate all the longs, get all the open interest out of the market, all the leverage out, and then absorb all that spot supply, and then create do a markup, and then create another range where they can make money over. And when I say they, I mean like the market makers can make money over another extended 3 to 6 month time period at like a higher tick, and that would be like that would be the best thing that could happen out of this. And if that does happen, chances of Pulse bottoming here is actually pretty good. But we got some stuff to look for now. We got to see the 21-day moving average act as support. That's like your bull market support band. So we tried here to get above it, and we held it for a couple weeks, and then it broke, and then retested and rejected off in that fundamental bad news. And I think what I'm looking for is at least create some form of a bottom here, come up here, get above the 21-day. As the price rises up, the 21 will kind of base out, and then we can start to bounce off that as support, start creating some upward momentum. Maybe test that, get above this downtrend here of the 1, 2, 3 taps, downtrend, get above that, retest, and resume off that level. So there's a lot that has to happen here, but to keep an eye on the 21-day would be good. Now, any close below this level here, and I would be concerned because you're basically in free fall. You could easily decline another 50% from that level. And I know it's not something people want to hear, but that's the reality of where we're at. And all it takes is one guy to dump, 30 billion Pulse, and it really kind of sends a shockwave through the entire system.
Wow. And is everything lining up as far as are the charts, are they similar or way different? For example, HEX, is it in a similar situation?
So in terms of that question, HEX looks a lot better. Let's see here, where's it at? So yeah, HEX looks a lot better in its dollar pair on the Pulse chain, but it doesn't matter because if Pulse drops, look at when Pulse drops 67%, HEX dropped 70%. So but it also ran up better too, right? So HEX ran up 157% here. PLS only ran up 62% here. So I guess the net result is like if one big bag holder decides to dump Pulse, it wrecks everything with it. Right, so it doesn't. You're more looking at what Pulse is going to do. If Pulse holds, everything's peachy. If Ethereum and Bitcoin hold and start to move higher, I don't think there's a reason why Pulse would have to drop lower, unless you got some sort of another fear event, right? Like I was saying before, like if he found out Richard slept with a 17-year-old girl and the DOJ was coming after him, not to put fear out there, but just saying that would be probably a good sell the news event, but let's hope that doesn't happen.
How many 50% drops? I mean, is there a point where we just? I guess is there a way to look at? Are we running out of sellers? Like, is there a way to answer that kind of question, and would that be the bottom if that happened?
I know it's a tough. I know we want to know this. We want to know when but it can go down forever. So that's not something you want to hear, but that's the reality of it. Is it can continue to drop 50%. Like, look at it, it's hilarious to me how this is even possible. But like, if you look at E-Hex, it's done so many 50% moves lower over the course of the last 700 plus days. So in terms of Pulse, like, there's a lot of people that sacrificed a lot of money. And like, if you go to this pulselead.com, pulselead.xyz, that's the one. There's guys in here 10 million, 9 million, 8 million, 6 million, 5 million, 4 million. There's like hundreds of guys, and there's at least 100 guys that have 700 grand or more in this. And even though they're down 50% right now, they still can dump and affect the chart, right? So that's just the reality of where we're at. Any one of these guys can dump. And if there's any follow through from the rest of the market, or like let's say Bitcoin drops for another extended period of time and this doesn't hold, right? Which, I don't know, we can't prove. Like let's say it happens like 2019 and you get this on Bitcoin, right? And it, because like the way I measure this is, shout out to Steve Courtney from Crypto Crew. He's looking at the Gaussian channel on the 5-day, and you go back to like previous cycles. Anytime the price goes into the Gaussian channel here, it taps it, it breaks down through and creates, a time period of red, and then you have to break out. But it takes an extended period of time. That was that first cycle. And then in that second cycle, you came down here off the blow off top, broke down into here, and then it was like it absorbed the price back down through it and pulled it below it for an extended period of time. And then the price had to get above it and not touch the Gaussian channel again in order to continue on its parabolic rise. And then going into last cycle, the same thing happened, but it happened twice. So you fell through after the blow off top, broke down below, broke back above, broke back into it, fell below, new lows, or I should say lows for that year on the COVID crash, and then the red, and then we finally got above it. And then, there was a test of the base, but it never closed below. But as soon as you started closing candles below after this blow off, I mean, it was, again, we got out, but then we got sucked back in for the bear market. And so we just recently, today, we broke down in here. So we need this 5-day candle to close basically at this level, which would be 27,000 or above on by Sunday night at 0000 UTC, or otherwise this thing's going to get absorbed down in. And what that looks like is, we don't bottom on this until potentially like early in the year. So, and if that occurs, then on PulseChain, you're looking at consecutive 50% drops until the overall crypto market bottoms, right? But once it does, that's why I say, this could be an extended, 100 to 300 day period of opportunity to buy all of these things at super low prices.
Yeah, I know you touched on it a little bit. Just to reiterate, though, what do you need to see in order before you feel comfortable? Before you're like, okay, boys, bottom's in. Like, what would you need to see for out of the pairs?
So I think what I'd like to see is, continually holding the 21 daily as support would be a fantastic start. So like we need to hold it for consecutive period of time. So if this 21 day starts to curve out, price gets above, we go sideways for like 6 months, and we still make like marginally higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. This isn't going to be something that's going to happen overnight, guys. Like at this point, like our chances of just like spiking down and like rocketing out of here in 3 months and being off to I just don't see that right now from where I'm sitting based on the dollar and other things that's going on in the macro. So it's going to be a long sideways accumulation period. So I'd like to see us hold the 21 to start, and then we can start taking out these resistance levels. So here, 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 and then holding those as support for another extended like many months of time. So we won't know that the bottom's in until it's like way in the past, which is why your best bet in terms of a buying strategy is to buy every new low. Always have dry powder for every new low. And because you can't do limit orders on PulseChain, you're gonna have to set alerts so that if we do make new lows, you can come in and put some money in on the things you care about. Beyond that, I mean, I'm doing a TA course. I'm working on the content right now. So that'll be coming out. I want to get it out soon, guys. Like I don't have a date yet. I'd like to get it out as soon as possible. But it's going to be in depth. It's going to be like a multi-day course. Like we won't be doing like a boot camp style this time. It's going to be, like a weeks of time for a course, and they're just going to go through everything that you get that I can try to relay all my 7 years of experience in markets, and teach you guys everything that I know. So look out for that, and in that, you can get deeper into the indicators of like, this Gaussian channel, for example, and just how to analyze things like the RSI. Here, I'll give you another one. So like we'll use the E-Hex chart on the RSI, and I've been using this for a while, but basically this is the entire price history of HEX in terms of its relative market strength. And this middle panel here is like the mid-range of strength. So a 50 level is even, is neutral. Below 50, you're looking at a weaker market. Above 50, you're looking at a stronger market. And like the overall theme here of HEX is that HEX during this period of time, its first 600 days, was a completely different asset than the last 600, 700 days. Basically, ever since that May of 2022, when PulseChain did not launch, let's see, no, this was September. Oh, okay, this was the 50 cent top. And then this here push down low was end of the year of 2021. And then this little spike here was PulseX sacrifice phase. So even though the price went from 12 cents to 36 cents, the relative strength of the market during this period never even came close to coming up to these levels. That's how strong the HEX market was on the weekly. So one of the things I could teach you guys is how to read this RSI on different time frames and do different types of time frame analysis to give you an idea of when things can recover. And so currently, like, we're in this like unique period where like HEX on Ethereum is potentially going to make new lows in the RSI, which would be like generational buy opportunities in the event that E-Hex survives. And for it to survive, it only has to go to 1 to 5 cents, because it's such a huge, from 1/10 of a cent to 5 cents is a huge markup. It's 50x. And so there's a market there that can be created. Now, do I think it's going to stop there? No, I think it can go a lot higher than that. That's my belief, because of the shit that happened here over the first 3 months of this year. Everyone forgets that HEX went and did like a 700% return in like 90 days or 70 days or something here.
Yeah.
So what I would look for in terms of bottoming is you want to see this RSI really start to move and try to get above that 45 level, and like we can play around in there and then continue to rise higher on this weekly. So you're looking at, you know, bottom being set sometime this end of this year, and then next year we should actually be a lot better off, based on what I'm seeing, because here would be your low, higher low, and this is like an attempt to set the bottom here. But we do need to start seeing some positive price action.
So the TSI, the total value. What about holders? Anything metrics around holders or wallets or anything like that we can see to try to see what's going on here?
Yeah, so like there's a lot of cool websites out there for this, but hexfire.io does a good job of kind of giving you like adoption. So like staker adoption, staker adoption on HEX on PulseChain is still increasing. And I think just people on the east side are just like holding off because they're trying to accumulate liquid bags over there and not so interested in staking with the uncertainties of gas fees and things like that. But you can look at things like that, right? You can look at adoption, amount of holders, amount of stakers, and watch those metrics specifically on the PulseChain as well. And there's places you can go for that. I think Dipcatcher made some sites for looking at like PulseChain adoption statistics, and you know, all that stuff's increasing. Like you know, on GoPulse, you can see that people are validating. You know, we're almost at 40,000 validators, so that means that this is a very well decentralized, you know, ecosystem. You know, and this is consistent APY that these guys are making. So there is incentive there to make money, and they're going to make money at these prices. Even if the price falls 50% and they hold for a couple of years, they still make money. So this is like just the correction period is like kind of hard for people to see where it can go. But yeah, adoption still looks good. And, you know, that's another factor that can play into, you know, determine how bullish you are. You know, I think I've talked a lot about TVL, HEX TVL. And, you know, during this time period here where this TVL increased in the beginning of the year, like there was like thousands and thousands of buys and thousands of sells, but there was way more buyers and sellers during this period. And actually this whole period here buyers were outnumbering sellers like 2-1, 3-1, days were 5-1. And so there was a serious adoption happening during this period. And then, that all kind of diluted into the other coins and on the new chain. But so the adoption has been happening for sure, and I think right now, because the prices are so depressed, the community is getting a little quiet, but it's going to take somebody with some balls of steel and some money to come in here and ignite the fire, and then everyone's going to be back.
Well, the fire lighters, I think we've got plenty of community and team, not team members. We're not a company, we're decentralized, but we've got plenty of community, people in the community, such as yourself, man, just sticking with it. And it's one of those things people, I don't know, it's like, the mood can fluctuate, green candles, red candles, all that stuff. But if you're sticking around, and even earlier, you mentioned it's one of the few communities, maybe the only community, where we can literally be like, yeah, 99% down right now, and just go on. Like, don't even flinch. You just keep going. Like, yeah, let's just continue talking. That's not even an issue. We're not even talking about that right now. We're talking about the future and why we believe in this thing, and we're talking about how to be successful in all of these areas, and not even worry about the price go down. So that is extremely cool in my opinion.
Yeah, so we're in that period. You guys, as we're wrapping up here, like, let's think about this more. About at this point, it's about coin accumulation, and not so much about dollar USD values. USD values more in that later phase of the bull market cycle, where you can start to extract like serious returns that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get in legacy finance, right? But right now, the game is coin accumulation. Some people, it looks different for different people. Some people sell local tops and buy the new bottoms, the new lows. Some people just accumulate through DCA. Everybody's got a different strategy. But ultimately, your coin count should be going up. And if you don't want to do any of the trading or analysis, that's fine. Have that core staking ladder working for you. I know a lot of us that did that early on have 50% or more of their bag now. It's just yield that they've got through HEX staking. And now there's other options with pulse validating and other things too. So lots of opportunity out there. Hope you guys are, got your eyes on the buy button.
Boy, that buy button, the opportunities, like you said, so many different places, and the community projects haven't launched yet that could hopefully lock up more coins. PHUX and other DEX has been adding a lot of volume on TVL over there. This locking up capital. All the communities really. That's what excites me a lot too. It's just so much capital and so many believers and so many builders that we have. That keeps me bullish all the time. And good stuff, man. Anything else? I know we're wrapping up here. We covered quite a bit, but yeah, what else? What do you want to take us out on?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see where this all goes. If we're anywhere in this period here, like this is that pinned post. It's all happened. Here we are in middle of August, and this thing was projecting out. Here we were when I made the chart. The bottom, then the PulseChain launch, run up, and then the crash. And so we're here now, guys. And if you close your eyes and buy, chances are in the next couple of years you're going to be looking at prices, over around 10 cents or higher for HEX, and that translates well for Pulse and that ecosystem as well.
Quick question before we go. What is Atropa? I know you mentioned that earlier.
So my understanding is it's a coin that was made, or a contract that was made that so I'm not fully in the know on what all these different layers are, but my understanding is that Atropa buys and burns pulse dye. So then it creates like a constant buy effect on the P dye. But I could be wrong, but so it's tied to P dye in its liquidity and in its tokenomics to help create positive buy pressure on P dye.
Interesting. Okay. I thought it was a company at first, but okay, it's actually a contract it's related to the P dye deal. Okay.
Yeah, so it's one piece of the cog. It's one cog in the engine of whatever's working under the hood to create this big run up on P dye.
Saga
Currently,
continues.
side note, it looks top to me, so be careful. A lot of people have made good money on this, and there's, so just a lot of people are calling for PDI to go to peg 1 to 1 or $1. Not that it couldn't do that because I could be, ill-informed or underinformed, or this could be being done by billionaires, or my gut sense is that somebody had a strategy or a plan, and it like to create this mystery around this protocol, and now it's working to create this crazy parabolic run up, and I just don't know. I think the idea was, create some sort of stable value between DAI and USDC that are forked, right? These forked copies that have no real USD backing, and it's doing that. When you look at the P DAI versus PUSDC, they're creating like a parity of like 1 to 1 at a 1.0 level. So 1 P DAI is equal to 1 USDC. Somehow there's this, this coin is creating a stability mechanism between these, and maybe that is, they're trying to create some sort of stable foundation, even if it's not tied. Even if it's not worth $1, it has created tremendous value from the lows, right? Like PDAI is up 112,000% from its lows to its current price. And so even if it can just hold parity 1 to 1 with a fake DAI and a fake USDC, that there is stability inherently. And so it doesn't really matter what the price is valued at, but you're creating a net that can capture value somehow through the tokenomics of Atropa and some of these other things that's tied to it in liquidity. And so I really don't understand it deeply enough. I've read some threads on it, and I just think it's interesting. But again, I guess I don't have any real closing statements on it other than it's definitely interesting.
Be careful out there, everyone. Now that we confirmed aliens are real, you never know what can happen. I love some of these videos, the aliens crypto crossover videos, and those are people. Very, very fun. Man, thanks for coming on. It's been a blast as usual. No surprise there. Thanks everyone for joining. I know you had a couple choices today, at least, maybe even more. Thank you for joining us. And if you're on the replay gang, I hope you got your money's worth today. It costs absolutely nothing to tune in. Very fun show. Thanks for coming on, man.
Make sure you go check out accessalive.com. I got some cool new tabs up on there. You might find something where you can get some value.
Newsletter as well. All that cool stuff, man. And you talked about the course coming out some point as well, the TA course. So very cool stuff.
2 courses. So there's a TA course, and then there were the finisher end of year is going to be the market cycle theory course, and that could be
the finisher.
That could be, that can really help you figure out where we set this bottom.
Wow. Very, very cool. All right, everyone. Scivive 5555. We are out.